Hi, Annette. Thank you so much for being on today. How are you?
I'm doing really good. I'm so excited to be here with
Yeah.
you to talk all about podcasts and just life and such.
Yes, me too. So, if you want to start, I did give a little intro about you, but if you want to tell us in your own words, who is Annette and what do you do?
It's a bold
Yeah.
question, right? So I am a soul embodied in this human form that's here to create love and magic on this earth. So I in my business Activations by Annette, I have two sides to it. On one side, I have Sanctuary Publishing, which is a hybrid publishing company supporting soul-led entrepreneurs and being published for their stories in a sacred healing way. And then on the other side, I have an in-person practice here in New Jersey supporting burned out women to return back to themselves through various coaching and healing modalities and practices. So, really, the underlying thread through it all is to support people and tapping into their limitless potential that we know that we have just been limited and contorted and put into boxes. And I'm here to say, hey, you can just like step outside of the box and like you don't need to live there anymore. So I'm kind of the rebel with a cause.
I love that. Yes. Yes. Getting outside of our box, getting outside of our comfort zone, knowing that we can actually tell our stories. Like, that's just beautiful.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes. So you did have a podcast. It was called Sacred Dance. Uh, What was the process like of launching that and getting that out into the world?
Mm. So yeah, it was called The Sacred Dance, and it was finding balance in a polarizing reality. I believe
Yes.
that's what it was all about. It's been it's been close to a year that I think September is when we stopped it.
Yes.
Um, but the process of launching it, one, I knew I couldn't do it on my own. So I didn't even attempt to do anything other than hire Jillian immediately in the beginning. But so that was the key component to the launch process, because if I had to figure out all the other intricacies and steps and things, I would honestly wouldn't have done it. And so thank you, Jillian. But the process of launching it really was actually the idea came to me when after I did a psilocybin mushroom journey and I was sitting outside one day and I was just like, everyone thinks that they're right and everyone thinks someone else is wrong, but like, what if no one's right and no one's wrong and we're all just living our truth? And I remember I was sitting outside like, oh wow. and and then it kind of just like led me deeper into this like sacred dance of existence and life. And then I was like, I want to talk about it. Like writing a post wasn't enough. Because I feel like my words better articulate what I'm trying to say. So yeah, that was kind of the set off point.
Yes. Yeah, because writing the post, you don't really get the emotion when you hear something. I
Yeah.
think, yeah, you know how sometimes you can read a text wrong that somebody writes you.
Yeah. And you're like, oh shit. And it's kind of I struggle sometimes to articulate via writing. So I think a podcast format was a beautiful outlet for that
Mhm.
form of expression and for getting out those like meatier pieces that wanted to come out, as well as connecting with other people. My podcast wasn't just me talking, it was me talking as well as bringing guests on too.
Mhm. Yes, because hearing other people's stories, other people's viewpoints is what opens us up to new worlds and
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah, I was like, maybe at some point I may explore this, but I was really leaning on like having conversations with people who had like total opposite views, right? And really kind of leaning into that more.
Mhm.
But I wasn't really ready for that just yet, but I may
Yeah.
be in the future.
So, why did you choose to delegate out your podcast to me, which I'm thankful for because I loved helping you and listening every week. So, how has delegating things in your business like helped not only your business but also your life?
Mm. First off, delegating the podcast was just essential. Like I just knew, and I just knew I wouldn't have been able to do it on my own. I was for so long Miss Independent. I can do everything on my own. I don't need you. I got this. Until I realized, oh, I actually can't do any of this on my own. I actually have never been doing any of this on my own. I've just been putting on this fake facade of like, I'm gonna push everyone away. Um, so I think that was a key component, is just really realizing like this is not a strength. I don't want it to be a strength for me. Like I didn't want to learn and I didn't want to figure it out. And I figured out so many things in my work and my business, right? So that aspect of delegation was crucial for me to really lean into why I was starting the podcast, which was to have the conversations and the connections. Everything else was not a part of my path. And Jillian was so amazing. You were so amazing at the process, and just like the way that you supported me throughout it. Like it was literally like I record and I'm done. I had to do nothing. And that was the sexiest thing about the podcast, I think.
Yes, allowing you to stay in your zone of genius while I stay in mine, I think is the best part of delegation. Everybody gets to like be where they love to be in this
Yeah.
online space.
Yeah. And I'm really exploring more and more about delegating as my business starts to expand and grow. For the last year, Sanctuary Publishing was at the forefront as I was kind of going through my own deeper healing process. And now this year, it was like, all right, now it's time for these two to dance together, right? And I no longer have an online coaching practice. So kind of transitioning to, okay, what's it like to have an in-person business? Crazy. Like, what is that?
Oh yeah.
I know you guys have that coffee shop, right? But
Yes.
it's like, okay, what is this? Like a new entity. And then also Sanctuary Publishing still needs to operate. I don't do everything. I have an amazing publishing project liaison is what I call her. And I'm still looking on hiring a few more people on my team so I can really just hone in on holding sessions, being with clients, and building relationships, which is again why I wanted to start a business. Not I didn't want us to have to start a business to like sit on my laptop all day and like go through emails or do whatever I need, whatever is a part of the process.
Yes, definitely. Yes. Which we do have to do in the beginning because until we make some money, we're kind of stuck doing that. And then once your business starts to grow, yeah, delegating, I think is the only way to actually keep growing because you can't do everything. No matter how
Yeah.
hard you try, you're just going to burn yourself out.
Yeah. And I think also, yeah, in the beginning, I mean, this is like third year of business, right? And I'm like, okay, I finally think I understand what's happening, and I understand what's my way of operating. I think we're still figuring it out, right? But I think that's a key component of like figuring out like what works for you and what doesn't work for you, and that only will come with trial and error, which is, I think, what being a business owner is. But something I wanted to touch on is that delegation is something that's not really prioritized in like the online coaching space, right? It's more of like hire your next coach, hire your next business program that'll help you. And my like just one thing I would love to say in this space is like, if you have money to invest in your business, or even if you don't, and you're like, I'm going to figure this out and piece it together, which I have been doing most of the time, is to lean into exploring what it would be like to delegating tasks more than just like hiring the next coach to solve something. Because I think that the delegation actually is like what we're craving, but we just aren't really shown that that is what we could do.
Yes, exactly. Yes, I hear everywhere, you can't grow unless you have a coach who helps you and can look in your business and see what you don't see. But if you're too much in your business and not doing the things that you love, I feel like, what's the point? Like if I have a business that I'm not really loving, like what was
Yeah.
this all for?
Yeah. And I know that we both have gone through our own evolutions, right? We've known each other since we first started our babies, January 2020,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So we've witnessed each other evolve and grow and be like, I'm going to try this now. I'm going to do this. Right. And it's been, yeah, just a deeper evolution of self. But that's something I just wanted to touch on, is like the power of delegation could be what you need. Rather than like going for someone else to solve your problem, because it may not have to, it's never, no one outside of us is going to solve any of our problems. And if they're trying to do that, then that's just not conducive to our own personal growth, right? But if we maybe, it's important to have a support system. I don't think that that's incorrect. I don't think it's bad to have a coach or a therapist or a healer or someone in your corner cheering you on, but also to acknowledge like when you can hold yourself and just like build from within.
Yes, yes, yes. Oh, I love that so much. So I want to talk a little bit, because I know I don't talk about this at all on my podcast, because I'm all about, starting a podcast. Why I love podcasts, but you did decide to end your podcast. Can you tell us a little bit about that journey?
Yes. So the process of ending the sacred dance was really just an acknowledgement of my own internal cycles. Like, I'm a person that is just known to pile it all on, to do all the things, to try and do everything at once until I hit a wall and I hit overwhelm. And then I'm like, okay, things have to kind of dissipate. And that was probably a pattern at that point. Where I was deep in sanctuary publishing, deep in creating these projects that were very new to me. And I was really still understanding the whole process. And there is something so I make most of my decisions based on how my body's feeling and how my intuition's guiding me, and knowing when it's time to release something and when it's time to hold on. And it was really an acknowledgement of, it's time to release this, because it wasn't bringing me joy any longer. It was bringing me more like, oh my God, I didn't share it yet. It was causing more kind of chaos in the brain that was already chaotic. I didn't have the space to really amplify it as much as I was desiring. So I think that was a key component of why I was like, okay, maybe it's time for me to release this. So that was my journey, and it was a sad realization of being like, hey, Jillian, it's gonna be our last one. This will be our last month. But also I felt really good about it, because I was so proud of like, wow, we did, I think like 20 something episodes, 26 episodes, and they were all really beautiful conversations. And the podcast is up. It still works for my business. It still works. Like, I have people randomly being like, oh, I listened to your podcast the other day. I'm like, oh my God, it's still up. Like, I forget, right? But it's out there in the world. And then we repurposed it. So I'm a teacher on Insight Timer. So we took those podcast episodes and put them on Insight Timer. So people are listening to them there, right? So the process was just like honoring that the death had to happen, but it still has its own little life without me really nurturing it. And I have been feeling into starting it up again. So maybe towards the end of the year or next year, but to do it from a place of like, can I really give it the breath, the space that it needs to be like its fullest ability to, be successful.
Yes, that is so important, having the time and being able to promote it and be consistent with it. Like, that all takes up space in your calendar, in your brain, everywhere. So yeah, it is a big commitment.
Yeah. And for me, it was really the promotion element that would always be like, oh my God, because everything was transitioning in my business, right? Like, I started it when I was just doing coaching and healing work. And then I transitioned into publishing, and it was like this identity shift that was happening. And I was like, how does this fit into life? So I think honoring like when it's time to start a podcast and when it's time to let it go are both equally as important. I think a lot of us are all about the rebirth, and like, I think I actually have a whole podcast about this, but it's like, it's all about rebirth, and we're all about like, let's do the new, let's start new things, let's do this, but no one really wants to die. No one wants to go through the death process. Death is the number one fear of humans, right? But that letting go can be so scary, but also is the liberation I think that we're looking for.
Yes, because I know you and me have gone through a lot of death and rebirth since we've known each other. Our businesses are definitely not anything like when we first met.
No.
Yeah. So, but it's gotten us to where we are now. I always, you have that thought like, what are people going to say? Because I'm going to end this, and I was all committed to it. But you know what? That's how you grow, and that's how you get to the place that you truly want to be.
Yeah. And I think that's just like, doesn't really matter what other people have to
No.
say. Doesn't really matter. Is that person living in your day-to-day life? Is that person making your decisions? And it's like, I think again, when we're giving our power outside of ourselves and we're always looking at other people, what are you doing? Should I do this? Maybe I should do this. It's like, that's when we start to make those disjointed decisions, which a lot of my business was disjointed decisions. Yes. But they were beautiful and they were important and part of the process. I wouldn't change them. But those decisions, right, weren't based on actually my way. They weren't based on what I was needing in my work, or what my way was, versus like the way that everyone else told me I should be.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I was doing that way too much at the beginning of my business, listening to what everybody else said I should in quotations be doing instead of listening to what do I want.
Yeah. Well, I think that's just part of one of the flaws of the space of, online entrepreneurship, and then tied to the online coaching world is thinking that someone else, again, how I was saying before, knows something outside of us, as well as, oh, it worked for them, it'll work for me, because it's sold in that way. Yes. And then because it's sold in that way causes manipulation and distortion. Yes. And that's not, and like, that's a big thing I'm here to shine light on, is if someone's trying to fit you into their box, run the fuck away. I don't know if I can curse, sorry. Run the F away from their box, because that's then perpetuating a cycle of manipulation, and it could be from a very unaware place if that's happening, but that's us trying to control someone else's reality. And I'm more interested in entering into containers now that's like, do you trust me to trust myself?
Yes.
Because if you don't trust me to trust me, then this won't be like a cohesive relationship. Like, I won't actually grow. I'll just be you.
Yes.
And that's not what I'm trying to do.
Yes, exactly. Oh, I love that so much. So before we wrap up here, I would love if you could, I'll start over. So before we wrap up, for any listeners who are feeling overwhelmed and thinking of starting to delegate in their business, do you have any tips for starting, like that first step to take to actually find the person you're looking for, or even knowing what you need in your business?
Yeah. One, I would say, and I'm sure this has probably been said many times, but really anchoring into like, what do you want to do more of? And like, don't be afraid to say it. Like, don't be afraid to say, it would feel really good if I could just like spend time with clients and not to have to do anything else. Like, don't be afraid to say that. Right. So claiming what you're desiring, and then also noticing like what is causing weight for you. And like really maybe sitting with your business. I was doing this the other day, and like sitting with the way it's all set up, how it's running, and like how, if you didn't need to hold this, how would that make you feel? And then when it comes to kind of connecting with the right people, I think taking your time to really like feel into a relationship is important, and setting proper boundaries in place, and also acknowledging at some point in the delegation process, you may need to let someone go. And right, honoring those cycles of like hiring someone and then also at some point letting them go, or they need to step away. And like, again, this is part of the journey. So yeah, I would say claim your desires and really take a look at what is weighing heavy on you.
Yes. Yes. Oh, That's so beautiful because, yeah, I'm trying to become an agency, and everything I hear is, well, you're the CEO, so you really don't talk to clients anymore or anything. And I'm like, that doesn't feel right to me. So realizing I still want to talk to my clients, I still want to be the forward face in my company, realizing so maybe that's not how I'm going to run my agency. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's like F you, maybe because like yeah, it's one of those things. I think we're moving more and more away from that. If we are open to it, of just moving more away from external validation and more like what's my way. And
Yes.
I just wanted to say for the last 30 days, I've been not consuming anyone's content. I've just been sharing my own and stepping away. So if that's something that you need to do more of
Yes.
removing yourself from consuming other, right? Because I think sometimes we go cold turkey on social media and then we feel like, oh my God, my business, is it going to grow? But there's a dance you can do, right? So really acknowledging if we're just consuming everyone else around us and how we can become a creator before we consume anything.
Yes. 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 Well, thank you so much for being on today. Can you please let the listeners know how they can connect with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can connect with me on Instagram. I have two different accounts. It's that Annette Maria is more for my coaching and healing work, and then Sanctuary Publishing is for Sanctuary Publishing. And also my website is activationsbyannette.com, and you can connect with me there as well.
I will make sure all of those are in the show notes. So thank you so much again for being on. This was such a good conversation.
Thank you.